investments in the U.S. have grown. In 2013, the total or aggregate amount of Brazilian investments in the U.S. came to $15.7 billion US dollars. These figures, nevertheless, do not truly represent the order of magnitude of these investments. And it is important to indicate that between 2007 and 2012, the growth of foreign investments by Brazil in the U.S. came to 221% in terms of the actual increase between 2007 and 2012. We want to
221%.
In our two economies. And that is one of the objectives of the efforts we have engaged in to further strengthen our macroeconomic policies, thus reducing risks for both Brazilian investments and foreign investments in Brazil. We have also developed a microeconomic agenda, therefore reducing or lessening regulatory risk, expanding the transparency or accountability of processes, and also the proper governance of relations between companies and the government. We're also expanding the investments opportunities in one area where coordination by the government is absolutely key in terms of setting the right expectations. I'm talking about the infrastructure area. We have launched an ambitious logistics infrastructure program, and we hope and we thank President Obama for his commitment in ensuring a greater presence of U.S. investors in that process, the logistics development program. I would also like to say that we have enjoyed a fruitful relationship between our two governments and the business communities. The recent bilateral CEO forum held in Brazil provided us with important suggestions, such as, for example, the establishment or setting up of an infrastructure information center to identify, coordinate, and promote investment projects, as well as the suggestion of developing financial tools and guarantees for investments in the long term with a view to stimulating private sector involvement. We also have a wide array of several other opportunities and achievements in areas such as the defense or arena, for example. We welcome the two agreements recently passed by Congress. The Defense and Cooperation Agreement, which will allow a very fruitful cooperation between the Brazilian Ministry of Defense as well as the U.S. counterpart Ministry of Defense. The Military Information Agreement, XOMIA, on military information, which will allow exchange of information in that area. In the field of technology, biotechnology, air and space technology. I'd like to highlight one point that President Obama and I discussed, and one on which we have come to a decision which I view as very important. I'm talking about climate change. Climate change is one of the central challenges of the 21st century. And we have one important objective, which is, number one, to ensure that the energy mix in our two countries will have a substantial share of renewable sources of energy. The decision has a great deal to do with the current outlook and our involvement as part of the global emissions reductions agreement, so that we are indeed in a position to materialize that agreement during the upcoming COP conference, COP21, to be held in Paris. The second area is very much related to the first one, which is the joint decision by our two countries to establish a 20% goal in terms of expanding the renewable share of sources of energy, except for the hydro sources, between now and 2020. I very much welcome that decision because it will prove extremely important in reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and also it speaks to our commitment of ensuring that the environment, and also efforts to make sure the global temperature will not go up beyond 2 degrees as agreed. to a zero deforestation rate, illegal deforestation rate between now and 2030. And we also wish to turn the page and engage in a clear-cut reforestation-oriented policy. That is an extremely important point for Brazil, and it also reflects the commitment we ourselves have undertaken as part of the forest code in effect in Brazil. So the environmental agenda, in my view, is absolutely key and essential for our two countries. Cooperation in energy efficiency, for example. We are committed to putting in place smart grids. We are also committed to minimum consumption levels, energy consumption levels. We're also committed to establishing efficient equipment and buildings. President Obama and I also discussed education extensively in our meetings. We believe that education in Brazil will provide us with two gains. Number one, social inclusion, so as to make sure that these social gains become permanent gains. And number two, the qualitative leap forward as regards our competitiveness towards the knowledge economy. And that is why we are most pleased to see our agreement on cooperation in technical vocational education between the Brazilian Ministry of Education and the Brazilian Department of Education. We are most pleased about that agreement. We also wish to establish partnerships between the government research institutes in each of our two countries with a view to achieving scientific technological improvement as well as innovation. I would also like to stress the importance of using education technologies as a means to move towards higher quality, more inclusive education. In that regard, without a shadow of a doubt, the high quality as well as the ability of the United States to develop scientific and technological research in that arena has proved very important. May I also state for the record that we attach a great deal of importance to cooperation as part of the Science Without Borders program. As part of that program, the Science Without Borders program, an important highlight is the fact that the U.S. has received the biggest number of Brazilian students. The U.S. has become the main destination of Brazilian students who are beneficiaries of the Science Without Borders program. And may I thank President Obama for having welcomed such a substantial wave of Brazilian grantees. I have often said time and again to President Obama that it is our ambition to change our cooperation in innovation into one of the central topics on our agenda. We also want to make progress in our energy cooperation, particularly between the linkages between the Argonne National Laboratory and the Brazilian Research Center in Energy and Materials, CNPEM. Tomorrow I will be in California, and while in California I intend to hold a very instigating meeting with information technology, biotechnology, and air and space companies. I'd also like to thank President Obama because we have come to a decision to facilitate entry of frequent travelers from Brazil in the United States as part of the Global Entry Program. We have also signed a very important agreement for the Brazilian population living and working in the United States. We're talking about the Social Security agreement that will allow the Brazilians working in Brazil in the U.S. to be equally covered under the Social Security agreement. We also addressed a wide array of different initiatives. I'd like to essentially highlight the following initiatives. The decision by Brazil to join the Global Health Security Initiative, GHSI. I think it is also very important to underscore that we have a wide array of joint initiatives that can be developed and put in place in third-party countries. triangular cooperation, particularly for the purpose of fuel production. In conclusion, may I refer to the importance for Latin America of the recent decision made by President Obama and by President Raul Castro, given a partnership with Pope Francis, to the effect of opening up relations with, resuming relations with Cuba, a very decisive milestone in the point in time in U.S. relations with Latin America. It is really about putting an end to the last lingering vestiges of the Cold War, level of the relations between the U.S. and the entire region. May I acknowledge the importance of that gesture to all of Latin America and also to world peace at large. It is an important example of relations to be followed. In conclusion, may I reiterate my invitation for President Obama to come to Brazil for the 2016 Olympics. I count on you. And of course, the invitation is extensive to the Vice President, but I understand both of them are not able to be at the same time, at the same place abroad, but the same is true for Brazil. But anyway, President Obama has a standing invitation to come to the 2016 Olympics in Rio, in Brazil. And while in Brazil, he will be able to wear his green and yellow jersey or garment, which says Brazil and also Obama on the chest. And I'm sure you will be applauded, President Obama, if you do so. And I also believe that this trip to the United States stands as a relaunch of our bilateral relations. So having said that, once again, may I thank President Obama and the U.S. people for the warm reception, for the welcome, and may I say that we have indeed taken one step ahead in our bilateral relations. Thank you very much.
Still, you will sign, likely, an agreement with Iran, and those issues will remain unresolved. What do you say to the families about how you will deal with their loved ones? And I guess the bottom line is, do you find the Iranian leadership trustworthy? And Madam President, welcome to the U.S. You canceled a previous trip to the United States following the Snowden revelations of Geneva translation. Of NSA spying. A little louder. A little louder, certainly. You canceled the previous trip to the United States following the revelations by Edward Snowden of NSA spying on you. Are you still troubled by those revelations, and have you received assurances, and are you satisfied with the answers you have received from the administration? Thank you.
Well, first of all, Jim, with respect to U.S. citizens, U.S. persons who are held in Iran, this is something that we continue to push hard on, irrespective of the nuclear deal. It's a top priority for us to make sure that our people are treated fairly. And on the face of it, in the case of these individuals who have been held, they have not been. And they are not being afforded the basic due process and legal rights that we afford visitors to our country. So we're deeply concerned about it. We spend a lot of time